So in today's video, I want to talk about Snapback, and you probably already saw a lot of videos about this plugin. It was all over, music production YouTube, and it's by Gable Guys. And this thing just detects drum triggers and then tries to use these drum triggers to trigger some samples, either in front or on top of the sound you are playing. So here I have it on the snare channel, right? And it detects here the snare drum, and we can also open up here the trigger panel to change the threshold and so on. Also change your input filters and the algorithm to detect these drum triggers. And when we detect this, we can then use here the transient panel to layer some samples on top. So here I just use the vinyl thing. You can hear every time the snare drum plays, we layer on top this kind of snare sizzle sample. We can also change the decay, the pitch, attack, and so on. Okay, so this is the one feature of this plugin, but we also have here the snapback area. So we can layer some samples in front of the trigger. That's kind of important. So let's use here a cymbal, right? And this one is triggered before the snare drum even plays. Okay. And you can see when you have this here on the channel, on the left side, when snapback is disabled, we have here a latency of 27 milliseconds. And when we use here some kind of sample in front of the drum sound, you can see we have now here a latency of 152 milliseconds. So what this does, it uses the trigger and then moves or delays everything by 150 or 40 milliseconds or so to actually process the sound. You can also change here the attack times and pitch and decay and so on. And I think this plugin is, not very complicated. And I think the real value lies actually in these samples here, because you have to find and select the right samples to layer actually with your drum sounds. And in my opinion here, these samples are pretty dope. They work in most cases, and they give sometimes the right frequencies or the right flavor to your drum sounds on top, right? I love here this too tight thing, for instance. Without this, I don't need the snapback that much for drum bass most of the times. I think it's more like for dubstep and so on. So yeah, so can layer something on top of drum sounds. Easy peasy, right? So now someone asked me, how can we do this in Bitwig Studio, right? Is this possible? And yes, it's possible, and you can replace this kind of plugin with the Bitwig native device called Replacer, okay? The Replacer looks like this with the init preset here, without the time shift actually, looks like this. We can detect here some drum triggers with filters, so we can just use here no filter or bypass the filter, then a band pass, and then a very steep band pass. And we can change then here when a trigger is detected, what we do with it. We hold here the MIDI note, or we send out MIDI notes. We can send out here a note on a different pitch, the velocity, and how long you want to hold this note, and so on. So you can change everything. And the replacer is pretty tight, in my opinion. It layers exactly on top of the drum trigger, so there's no delay or anything you need to worry about, right? And I created here this kind of preset. So I have this replacer here to detect the triggers, and then in there I have here a sampler for the snaps to layer something on the top of the sound, and this back layer here, which is samples that are reversed. I reversed it here manually, but you can probably also use here the reverse feature of the sampler if you want to, but here I just, you know, did it on the samples itself. So yeah, so I want to show you how this sounds here. So let me dial down here the snap and the back volume. So I call the snaps the thing you lay on top, and the back is the pre-sample, more or less. So now we have something on top of the snare, right? So this is the snare without anything. And you can select a different sample here with this knob. You can change the decay. Or use a high pass here to actually remove some low end from the sample. Okay, and then I used here this pre-sample or fade-in sample, I don't know how you want to call it, or snapback. Okay, and it does the same thing as the plug-in version. I selected here, I created some samples for it. There's a time shift here. In the end, it's removing 142 milliseconds, so basically delaying every other track in the project by 142 milliseconds to actually use the trigger and then put something in front of it. And I choose to use here 142 because all my samples here are exactly 142 milliseconds long. So this is my offset I need to use to actually put this in front of the sample. So when you want to create additional samples here for this kind of preset, then you have to use 142 milliseconds or choose a different length and then, you know, change here the offset by this amount. That's important to know. And I think I also introduced here 142 milliseconds. So if you don't need the snapback, I think you can disable this by right click here. And then you go down to 0.5 milliseconds of delay. So if you don't need this snapback pre-sample, then you can just disable it, right? And yeah, go down with the latency. But here it's a very simple preset actually. There's nothing much to it. It's just a replacer and some samplers in here. I created some samples for it and it's completely free. You can download it in the description down below. And yeah, experiment with it, play with it around. But in my opinion, for this snapback VST here, it's all about the interface, like always, right? You have this nice interface. You can see here all the triggers, where they're happening. You can dial in all the offsets. You can change the volume and filter it. So the interface is really nice. And also the selection here of the samples, you have some really nice samples in here already in place. So this is where the value is of this plugin, in my opinion. Okay, but if you don't, or if you can't use this because you are under Linux, or you just need some kind of cheap solution for this problem, then you can take my preset here. It's completely free and use it in Bitwig Studio. Maybe I add some more samples to it. But if you own Snapback, you maybe can export these samples here from this plugin and then put it into my preset here. And then you have more or less the same thing, just as a native Bitwig solution. Okay. So that's that. Someone asked me this under my last video. I wanted to create this preset here for you, and I hope you can use it. I hope you find it useful. Thanks for watching. Leave a subscription, leave a like. See you in the next video. Bye.